Welcome to our study on the book of Romans. This is Sonship Orientation, and this is session 69. Wow, will we ever get through getting oriented? But we are, and you're going to like what we're going to do today. The last time we left off talking about the strange man and the evil woman. And we had defined those, and we had been... What? Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know what? Thank you for listening. People on the tape, I wonder if they caught that. Somebody's listening to this on their DVD player and they're writing that down. Ooh, I never heard of these before. Thank you. The evil man and the strange woman. Sorry, I got my tongue tangled. Wow, I did say that? Okay. Evil man and the strange woman. And we were looking at how they were at work in the nation of Israel, both before they ever went into the land and after they were in the land. They encountered both of those oppositions. The reason those are important is because you and I and this assembly is going to encounter both of those oppositions as well. Now that I'm talking, this is really cranked up, hasn't it? Okay, when we left off in that last session, I know that we didn't get all the way through those notes, but I don't want to go back and just review everything that we did before, but they were going into the land, and was the land prosperous? Yeah, remember how it was described. Even God told Moses before they got in there, this is a land flowing with milk and honey. And you're going to see, and then when the spies go in and come back, remember we read that passage where they were carrying a single cluster of grapes on a pole between two men. That's the kind of produce that was in the land. Oh boy. Now, God knows when they go in and they see all of that, there is going to be a temptation to get caught up with what they're looking at. And when they're looking at it, who's in there? It's the Canaanites. It's all the people that live in the land of Canaan. And do they worship the one true God? No, they don't. So, you know, if you're not careful, if you're not careful, it would be real easy to look at what they have and say, maybe we should start doing what they're doing. Look how good they've got it. Right? God knows that. And so because He knows that, He warns them, when you come into the land, don't look at them, don't look at what they're doing, don't get impressed with their gold and their silver, don't get impressed with the land, any of that business. Because I want you to remember who you are and what you're here for. Now, there's a line we're going to draw in this, but I'm going to take you somewhere. And I told you that even though you had all those fruit trees in the land, the first 3 years, they couldn't eat one piece of fruit off of those trees. The 4th year, they had to give the whole harvest to the Lord. In the 5th year, only then could they freely eat of those fruit trees. And we talked about this. The wisdom of this world would look at that and say, that's foolish. Why is God doing that? Because God wants them to be in a position where the allurements and the comforts, because that's what the world uses, don't tempt them like it normally would. He wants them to learn to say no about that. Now, let me ask you a question. In the kingdom, is that land going to be as fertile and as productive as it ever was under the Canaanites? You know, it'll be even more so. It's not like God doesn't have it, not like God wants them all to starve to death out there. That's not the point. The point is, don't allow the world and what it offers to lure you away. Stay focused on what you're doing. And that's the point. Okay, now with that, they're also told, don't make any covenant with the Canaanites, and don't intermarry, and don't allow them to stay in the land. Drive them all out. So here it is. Exodus 23:31, and I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea, even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and thou shalt drive them out before thee. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against me. For if thou serve their gods, it will surely be a snare unto thee. Now what wound up happening with that? They not only allowed them to stay in the land, they not only did make some peace treaties with some that was in the land, they began to intermarry with these folks and even began to name their kids after the Canaanite names. Because of all of that, excuse me, they fell victim, and this is where we're going with this, not to the evil woman that I mentioned earlier. They fell victim to the evil man. That God knew this was the very first allurement that was going to come to them. It's the first way they were going to be tempted. And by the way, that one got them. That got them. They did get enamored with all that was in the land. All right, now listen, I'm going to make a comparison here. When we get back over to the book of Romans, you're going to find that the same two oppositions that face them are going to face us. And the very first one is going to be the evil man. You're going to get that one first. This assembly is going to get that one first. And because they succumbed to that in the land, did not deliver them from that's like the 1-2 punch. The evil man and the strange woman. And for us, we have to make sure, now just to make sure you know who I'm talking about here, somebody give me, what are we really talking about when we're talking about the evil man? All right. We're talking about the course of this world or the world at large. We're talking about, now Satan is the one that got it going, but he made this thing so it is actually fed by the ungodliness of unsaved men. You know what that means? This thing has all the power supply it needs. And Satan doesn't have to get behind the wheel, so to speak, and push on the gas. This thing just runs on its own because it just feeds off the natural ungodliness that's in the world. And men fashion this world in a certain way. Now, the strange woman, what is that? That is the policy of evil. That is the one that Satan himself is involved in. And now we're going to take a look at these because when we get over to Romans, now I'm going to take you over to Romans 12, because this very first thing, when your education starts, now I'm going to do it just a little bit now, but next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you ahead and we're going to pretend that everybody in the room has gone through the whole level 1 education and you are simple sons. And I'm going to show you what's waiting for you in your education on the other side of that. Now that is going to be, that doesn't sound like much, but that's going to be way more exciting than you think. And when we get over there, that's going to be something I think you're going to remember for a long time, because you're now going to get a glimpse, because already you know what level 1 is about. It's about orientation and establishment, and then those 4 decision-making skills. But once you get those, what's waiting for you on the other side of that? And I want to show you that. That's why we've come back here before we went back to Romans. I want to walk you through the whole curriculum here so that you have an idea of what it is you're looking at when you get back over there to Romans. Now, with that in mind, you're going to start your education proper. There's your sonship orientation. 16 to 39 is your sonship establishment. 9 through 11 is the dispensational change. I'm going to talk to you about that. By the way, and as I mentioned to you last week, we're not spending a long time in 9, 10, 11. You folks already know about that. You've already done a lot of background work. The fact that you've gone through the 5 cycles of judgment and all that kind of business, see, you've already got a lot of that there already. But then, 12, 1 and 2 is the final checkpoint before you begin your education, where Paul is going to beseech you to do something. And you're either going to say, yes, I will, or no, I won't. And then, from Romans 12:3 through 15, let me think, 7, through chapter 15, verse 7, that is the education in those 4 decision-making skills. And then from 15:8 through the end of the chapter, however many verses are in chapter 16, there is one other issue sitting here in the book of Romans that right now, if I were to talk to you about it, you would think to yourself, because we've just been saying in a generic way, from 12 to 16, that's the education. But actually, the education is going to end in 15:7. And right now, even though you may not totally comprehend this, but when we get over to 15:7, even though it is the end of being educated in godly equity, remember that was wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, and that's what you get in those chapters from 12:3 to 15:8. As soon as you get through with your education in godly equity, you're going to say to yourself, he can't stop here. There's something else he needs to do. Now, I'm not telling you now what that something else is. All I'm telling you is, when you look at it from where you are right now, you would say, just give us the education, and when the last lesson's done, we're done. But when you actually go through the education, you will look at that and say to yourself, he really does need to tell me something else now in view of this. And it'll make perfect sense to you. I'm just kind of telling you about it. I know you're all giving me that look like, why do you tell us that stuff and then you don't tell us what it is? But but you'll see there's a naturalness to this and you'll expect it. Now, let's go to this part, this checkpoint. Because as you start this first checkpoint to begin the education proper, take a look, and you know these verses. Most folks have memorized these verses. They've heard them preached so many times, they know them. I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. But look at verse 2. And be not conformed to this world. Do you know what that is supposed? Before, that always just seemed like a generic thing, you know, don't be conformed to the world. Now, here's what you know. Because you not only understand that that is the evil man, that the course, what Paul calls the course of this world, is what in Israel's program was known as the evil man. And you know that's the first major opposition that's going to come against you as a son. So the very first thing you're given in this beseeching to present your body a living sacrifice is to exhort you to not be conformed to this world. See, with the understanding you have, you're supposed to see that as, oh, you know what he's doing? He's warning me about that first major opposition, so that must be the thing that is now about to come my way. And I'm going to tell you, look here, as soon as you start this education in godly wisdom, right here, I mean, well, I don't know how to do it. Let's just put it over here. This is where the evil man is really going to turn up the heat, right here. You can put your finger right on it. And if you're going to look in your Bible, that's going to be Romans 12:3. Now, I'm going to tell you now, no matter what's taken place for you up to this point, as soon as you begin in this assembly, as soon as we get to Romans, we'll do 12:1 and 2. When we start the education proper, especially if you come out of this checkpoint going, yes, I am going to do this. I am going to present my body a living sacrifice. I am going to prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. As soon as you say that, and we start the education, this is going to come up, and here's what it's going to be about. I'm going to tell you now. It's going to be, the world is now going to make you an offer about what you're going to do on Sunday afternoons from 1 to 3. You might as well mark that down. I'm telling you that's coming. You're going to, something that you may not even know about right now. Maybe you do. But something you don't even know about right now is going to come along. And I'm going to tell you now, from Sundays to 1 to 3, the evil man has one objective, and that is how you spend your time. And you're either going to spend it in sonship or you're going to spend it in something else. Now look, I'm just telling you what's coming. We're going to pull this right out of the exhortation. I'm not trying to, set you up. I'm just trying to say that's what's coming, and this is where it's going to come in, right here. You just know. And whatever it's been before that, this is where it ramps up. So what is the first admonition here? Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And guess what this education is do? It is to get you thinking like your Heavenly Father thinks. That's the renewing of your mind. That's what He wants to get going with you. Now, that's why Paul, with the Corinthians, by the way, because when you come from Romans, the next book is 1st and 2nd Corinthians, right? And in 1 Corinthians, you remember the Corinthians ran off the rails. And in fact, I'll show you now where it is, but later you'll get to see exactly in the Scripture how you know that. Where in the world did the Corinthians run off the rails on their sonship? Right there. They got to Romans 8, 14 and 15. That means they understood all about their justification. They understood the first two parts of their sanctification. They were dead to sin and alive unto God. And they knew they were sons. And that was fine with them. But when they got into this orientation, they saw some things that they were not going to do. And they were not going to allow that. And that is where they stopped. And so Paul writes 1 Corinthians to get them back on track. And in the midst of that, and because the problem with the Corinthians is, their problem is that they succumbed to the attack of the evil man, the course of this world. And Paul's going to get very specific with them. Now I want you, this is why he says, I'm just showing you one verse, but this is why he says it. And they that use this world, not as abusing it, for the fashion of this world passeth away. There's a point that he's making to saying to them, the fashion of this world is going to pass away. Now he has something in mind when he's talking about that. I know when you think of fashion, you think of ladies' clothes, And you know what? Fashion does pass away, doesn't it? All right. But here's the point Paul's going to say. All these things that you traded for your sonship, the things that ungodly men have fashioned or put together in this world system, all of that's going to pass away. And you know what that's going to include? The wisdom of the world. That's passing away. And not only that, the fashion of this world. Now, I am going to talk to you a little more about that, but I'm looking at my notes because I know I made an extra note in here that's not in yours to talk about this, and so evidently this isn't the place that I'm going to do it. But so, just to locate the evil man, this is where he's going to start with us, and you're going to find that in the book of Romans. Right over here is Romans 12:3. Now, let's go back to Israel's program and look at Deuteronomy, because I want you to see how he's going to warn them again about not getting caught up. By the way, there's something else about the policy of evil, the strange woman. And that is, when Satan is working his policy of evil, does anybody know? Now, by the way, those are two different things. The evil man and the strange woman are two different things. The strange woman, I told you, has a religious or a spiritual aspect to it. That's how you know the difference. We're about to read the strange. Well, let's just read it, and then I'll talk about this. Deuteronomy 7:25. The graven images of their gods shall you burn with fire. Thou shalt not desire the silver or the gold that's on them, nor take it unto thee, lest thou be snared therein. For it's an abomination to the Lord thy God. Neither shalt thou bring an abomination into thy house, lest thou be a cursed thing like it. But thou shalt utterly detest it, and thou shalt utterly abhor it, for it is a cursed thing. I want to show you something right here. It's a perfect place to show you. When the strange woman begins, when the policy of evil begins to do what it's going to do, the very first way that it begins to work. Now remember, policy of evil is different from the course of this world. But in the beginning, the policy of evil uses the world. So that when you look at it, it's hard to tell, is this the world or is this the policy of evil? And I'm going to tell you, you're going to see them both. Take a look. The graven images of their gods, where would that come from? Policy of evil. But look, he says, and thou don't desire the silver or gold that's on them. What's the desire for the silver and gold? Of course, the world. See? So, you see what you have? You have the policy of evil utilizing the world. Why? Because it's readily available. It's easy. It's already in place. And for most, listen, that's all the policy of evil needs, to just utilize the world. Now, I've given you another thing that you know is coming. And that is, when the strange woman attack, and I'm going to show you exactly where that's going to happen. When the strange woman attack comes against us, even if you resist the world when it makes its opposition, when the policy of evil comes along, it's going to turn right back around and use the world and try you again. I don't know if you realize it, but you remember when Jesus had fasted 40 days and then Satan came to tempt him in the wilderness? I don't know if you realize it, but you know, people look at the Gospels and they see the order that those temptations came in. Remember, took him up to the pinnacle of the temple and said, cast yourself down, you know, won't the angels bear thee up? You know, it's written in the Psalms. And then, you know, fall down and worship me and I'll give you the kingdoms of this world. And, you know, you know, command that these stones be made bread. But here's what you notice from one gospel to the next. The order of the temptations is different. And what you're supposed to understand, and if you read it carefully, you'll see it, there was more than one temptation. It didn't just happen one time. And there's a reason it happened more than once, and there's a reason it happened in a different order the second time. So I'm using that to illustrate the evil man's going to come along and say to us, hey, look, isn't this great? And get you away. If you say no, then the strange woman will come along, but she's going to utilize the world and she's going to try you again. But this time there's an additional element to it because it's not just the world, it's the policy of evil. Okay, now, I have another verse to give you, and it's right on the heels of this one. Deuteronomy 12:29, when the Lord thy God shall cut off the nations from before thee, whither thou goest to possess them, and thou succeedest them, and dwellest in their land, take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them, after that they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. God says, now He's warning them about this. If there's anybody that should have understood why they were being brought into the land and what they were going to be doing there, it should have been Israel. Because God told them that over and over again clearly. If you know why you're doing something and what its purpose is, it is more difficult to get you off track. But even though you may know that, Israel is a perfect example, you can be. So you ask yourself the question, why am I here on Sunday? I know it's not for my sparkling personality. Why are you here on Sunday? Not because, well, I got a couple hours to kill, I thought I'd go up and do it like that. You know what we're doing here. But it's easy, if we don't think about that, to forget the purpose behind what we're doing and the value we're supposed to place on this. And when you forget that, the strange woman now is the perfect opportunity to come in and utilize the world and to try to get us off track. Now, just as Moses warned them about the evil man, he didn't call it that. That's what David calls it. He also warns them about the strange woman. Let me give you the scripture on that. Deuteronomy 13:1. By the way, look where we were warning about the world. Very next verse, it's 13, and now you've got the second opposition being given to you. They're right in a row. So he says, if there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass. Do you see that? They give you this sign or wonder, and it works. Whereof he spake unto thee, saying, let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet, or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God proveth you to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Now, this is dangerous for Israel, because he says sometimes there's going to come a guy in, and he's going to prove what he's saying is true by performing a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder is going to come to pass. Is it naive to believe that just because it happened, it must be of God? It is. But you know what? People in every age forget that. They think, oh, well, it worked. Must be of God. Big mistake. Because Satan's counting on that kind of ignorance. God says you have to know more than that. You have to know more than, oh, look what they did, and it worked. It worked, so it must be God. He said you've got to know more than that. And if anybody comes in, now, can you see how this is not the world at all? This is the policy of evil. Because here's what's going to happen to you. The evil man is going to come against you here, and as you progress through this education, I'm going to tell you something. You are going to get to a place where the world is going to become ineffective with you. And the draw it used to have, it won't have anymore. And it's not going to, and then when the policy of evil tries to use it, if you say, I'm not going for that, I see what that is, that's clever, I'm not doing that. When you do that, now the policy of evil is going to ramp up, and it's not going to utilize the world anymore, because now the world, it doesn't have the effect on you that it, he was hoping it would have. The things you're learning are actually renewing your mind, and the world isn't having that draw anymore. And because of that, now the policy of evil is going to come along, and it's going to say, it's the pure, unadulterated policy of evil. and I'm going to put the clamps on you and see if you'll fold. That's what Satan is doing with this. Now, before I show you where that is, let's finish this passage, because here's what God told them to do with the prophet that comes and says, let's go serve other gods. And that prophet and that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has spoken to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, to thrust thee out of the way which the Lord thy God commanded thee to walk in. So shalt thou put the evil away from the midst of thee. And listen, I'm not saying today we're putting them to death. That's in Israel's program. That's in accordance with their doctrine. People get confused about that, and I've even read books where people talk about people who commit sins that got the death penalty under Israel's program ought to be put to death today. They fail to discern the difference in the programs. God's not doing, that's not what God's after today. But I want to show you how far this influence goes, even to a family member. Deuteronomy 13:6, if thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thine own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, let us go and serve other gods which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, namely of the gods of the people which are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far from thee, from one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth, thou shalt not consent unto him. That means don't say okay, you don't consent, nor hearken unto him, don't listen to him anymore, neither shalt thine eye pity him, neither shalt thou spare, neither shalt thou conceal him. But thou shalt surely kill him. Thine hand shall be the first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. And thou shalt stone him with stones that he die, because he has sought to thrust thee away from the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall do no more any such wickedness as this is among you. Now, in a minute, we're going to read what Paul is going to say. And he's going to go back and point you back to the things that happened with Israel. And here's what he's going to do. He's going to tell you those things happened to them for our example. And then he's going to go down a couple of verses. And then he's going to say, and those temptations that happened to them are an insample for us. Now, we'll read this in a minute. But before we do, I'm going to make this application. And that is, just as the world came against Israel, the world is coming against us. Just as the policy of evil used the world, and we saw that, the gold and silver off those graven images, is going to use the world, then it's going to happen with us. And then there's going to be a straight policy of evil attack, this one right here, to try to mislead folks. And Paul is going to tell you, do you know what those things are? They're an example. One thing is an example, and another part of that is an insample, because that's exactly what's going to happen to you in your sonship. That there is going to be something to come your way to say, let's don't do this anymore. Let's go do this other. And that is part of what's meant to draw you away from your sonship. Now, you are at liberty, and you do have the ability to walk away from it. And if you walk away from it, God is not going to cause you to lose your job. If you walk away from it, God is not going to, cause you to get sick. That's not it. But let me ask you this. Do you think there are any consequences whatsoever to that kind of action? Yes, you're all right. There is exactly some consequences to that action. We haven't talked much about what they are yet, but we will. But believe me, if you can choose to do it, and He gives you the liberty to do it, but there is consequences to that. Now, where are we at here? 11. Now we're coming in the chapter to the part I really wanted to get to. So here we go. If thou shalt hear say in one of thy cities, which the Lord thy God hath given thee to dwell in, saying, certain men, the children of Belial, or as some folks say, Belial, I don't care how you say it, doesn't sound good either way, does it? The children of Belial are gone out from among you and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their cities, saying, let us go and serve other gods which you have not known. Then shalt thou inquire and make search and ask diligently, and behold, if it be truth and the thing certain that such an abomination is wrought among you, then shalt thou surely smite the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, destroying it utterly, and all that is therein, and the cattle thereof with the edge of the sword. Now, these children of Belial, these are the ones that are actually sent in under the policy of evil to get you off track. And it is purely religious in nature. Remember, we had that little talk before the start of the session today. And I told you that later than where we are right now, the policy of evil is sending somebody in here for the express purpose of moving us away from what we're doing. And they're going to be smooth with it, and they're going to have the kind of personality that it's pleasing and likable. And you're going to have to be careful not to confuse personality with the message. Because if we make that mistake, then the children of Belial, by the way, that word Belial means of no value or worthless. And that's what that means. But this was the attack. What was the strange woman, the policy of evil, religiously? What were they going to do with Israel? What was the plan? What was the policy of evil's intent? To get them what? To go after other gods. And there's all kinds of ways to do that, right? We'll build other images, right? And we'll worship those images. And I don't know if you remember, but later in Israel's history, there came a time after David and Solomon where the temple wasn't even being used for what it was supposed to be used for. And when they were cleaning up, they found a book that was the word of the Lord. And somebody said, well, what is this? And they brought it to the king. The king said, well, read that to me. You would say, how can you ever get in that condition? That's how it happens right there. You just start mingling this. See, just a little bit. You just start mingling this a little bit. The thing about Israel was she was supposed to be separate and distinct. The difference was supposed to stand out. Instead, in just little ways in the beginning, compromise that. And then it leads to finally getting to a place where they don't even know what the word of the Lord is anymore. Okay, well, we don't have much time left here. So what I want to do is, by the way, I want you to, I think this is the place where I'm going to give it to you. Let me just give you the verse. I talked about it right here before I forget it. Moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and the sea and did all eat the same spiritual meat and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now look at this. Now these things were our examples. There's the first one. These are our examples to the intent we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. There's the first part. Let's keep reading. Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them, as it's written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed and fell in one day 23,000. Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted and were destroyed of serpents. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured and were destroyed of the destroyer. Now all these things that happened to them, happened unto them for our insamples. Do you see the difference here? And they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore let him that thinketh he standeth take heed, lest he fall. Now, what is the difference between an example and an insample? Ex nihilo. The Latin for when God created, He created the world ex nihilo, out of nothing. Ex, out. Insample. This X is out of, in is within. Remember I told you when you go to the grocery store, I don't have anything. It's a box of crackers. And they give you, they have it was laid out in a little bowl. Yes? They open up a box, they put them out in a little bowl, and they say, would you like to try some of these crackers? And then, and so you get one, and you go, oh, that's pretty good. And they say, would you like a box? And you go, yeah. What are you going to do when they dump the rest of that back in that box and close it up and they give it to you?
I want that one.
Okay, Gloria doesn't want that one. But that one, you know what you think you're getting? You think you're eating an example, which means they're going to give you a different box. See? An example, you're eating but not out of the one you're going to get. An insample means you're eating out of the box you're getting. That's an insample. Now, how does that translate into what we're talking about? I have no idea. No, I do have an idea. The first part of what he talked to you about, what happened to them, that was an example. And he said, you know what? Don't lust after those things like they lusted after. Use them. You know what an example is. I mean, everybody understands that. It's the pattern you follow. An insample is something more. It not only means you follow this pattern exactly, but it includes how you follow the pattern. What does that mean? That means these two oppositions that came to Israel are coming to you in the exact same way. It's an insample. And that pattern is going to be exact. And there is a way to say no to those oppositions, and that's going to have to be followed precisely. And you could say it like this: an insample is of such a nature that if you don't follow that, not only follow the pattern exactly, but how you follow the pattern, if it's not exact, that is going to be to your own peril. That's what insample has behind it. Okay, minute and a half. So, let's see if I've got time to take you where I was taking you next. Let me just end the verse with this, because this is great. There hath, sorry, dropped my crackers. All right. You know, we started here. Now, here's the next verse. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. Here's these two temptations right here. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it. Do you remember when I told you, and now we're looking at the verse, that as you progress through your sonship education, and you become a simple son, and then a young man, and then as you're moving up, Satan cannot put something on you above that which you have been equipped to handle. And there it is. Now, I know we've always looked at that before, and we've kind of said to ourselves, well, God's not going to let more come on me than I'm able to bear. And that's true, but there's an additional element that you know about this now. You're not always going to be where you are now. You're going to move up. And when you move up, so does the attack move up. And so the policy of evil's attack against you is going to ramp up in accordance with your education. But here's the wonderful promise of God. Right now, this assembly is not yet simple sons. So Satan can't attack you like he would a simple son. He can't attack you like he would a young man or a wise man, certainly not a man of understanding. He has to deal with you right where you are. He said, well, where are we? We're in the sonship orientation. What you say, well, then he has to deal with us according to that. Exactly right. Now listen to this. That's what we're going to end the session with. So at sonship orientation, what does Satan in the pure policy of evil get to do with us? Ready? Here it is. Nothing. The attack you're under now is this one. This is the one. I know what you're thinking. Hey, I've had some things happen in my life. I just know it was the devil. But I'm going to tell you, it wasn't. Because I'm going to show you in your curriculum the very first time. This is true for all of us. I'm going to show you the very first time that you're told you're finally going to deal with the policy of evil. Would you like to see that? He's going to tell you exactly when. You're going to look at it. You'll not only know when in the Bible, but as you're going through the curriculum, you're going to walk in one day, somebody like Gloria, a troublemaker by nature, will walk in that door and she's going to go, today's the day, everybody. Today's the day we can start looking for the first time we're going to encounter the policy of evil. That's how sure you're going to know where this is. Because the Bible lays it out for you. We'll look at that when we come back from the break. I'll show you where it is.